and urban development 59,187,344. Education gets $104,533,838. Health gets $73,664,479. Youth, sports, and culture gets $11,701,699. Sustainable development gets $25,383,560. Foreign affairs and aviation gets $25,467,768. The Office of the Attorney General gets $12,304,476. Labor gets $7,066,655. Human Settlements, Ecclesiastical Affairs, and National Health Insurance gets $11,570,741. Environment and Cooperatives, $2,950,731. Entrepreneurship and Communications, $9,028,276 for a total expenditure of $952,200,453. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocations would not only assist the government to maintain its heavy investment in our people, and when we hear 100+ million to education, we know we are talking people investment. When we hear 73 million for health care, we are talking people investment. So, Mr. Speaker, heavy investment in our people, but it will also help to build the resilience in the response to the pandemic and put our country of St. Kitts and Nevis back on track to becoming a model small island state. Our proposals for capital expenditure will make a significant contribution to our economic recovery by creating jobs and more jobs and moving our country closer to fuller recovery. We are taking a cautiously optimistic outlook for the fiscal year 2022, and therefore these proposals are setting the wheels in motion to advance our plan for putting St. Kitts and Nevis back on track. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
The question is that the bill entitled the Appropriation 2022 Bill 2021 be read a first time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Motions. My apologies. The question is, I retract that motion that I put a minute ago. The question should be and is that the approval of the estimates of expenditure be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Statements by ministers. Personal explanations. Introduction of bills and first reading.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I take pleasure to seek leave to introduce and have read a first time the bill entitled the Appropriation 2022 Bill 2021.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
Now the question, the appropriate question. That the bill entitled the Appropriation 2022 Bill 2021 be read a first time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to provide for the services of St. Christopher and Nevis for the financial year commencing 1st January 2022 and ending on 31st December 2022, otherwise known as the Appropriation 2022 Bill 2021.
The Appropriation 2022 Bill 2021 has been read a first time.
Public Business Bills, second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise now to formally present for debate the Appropriation Bill 2022-2021. The bill, of course, Mr. Speaker, says that it is a bill to introduce for the services of St. Christopher and Nevis and for the financial year commencing 1st January 2022 and ending the 31st of December 2022. There shall be an hearing is hereby provided to Her Majesty the Queen for and during the period of 1 year, commencing the 1st day of January 2022 and ending on the 31st day of December 2022, the sum of $875,272 over and above the sums granted and provided under the Acts and other laws in force in St. Christopher and Nevis to be applied and expended in the manner and for the services set forth in the schedule hereto. The said sum of $847,875,272 shall be, and the same is hereby declared to be, charged upon and payable from and out of the consolidated fund of St. Kitts and Nevis. The authority to pay, Mr. Speaker, is identified in Clause 4. The Accountant General of St. Christopher Nevis is hereby authorized and required from time to time upon the order or warrant of the Minister of Finance to pay the several services herein mentioned as the said order or warrant shall direct out of the consolidated fund, and he should do so without further order or formality once this bill is passed. The attachment, of course, Mr. Speaker, gave again a repetition somewhat of how the $952 million would be expended in the financial year. And it adds for those expenses of $104,325,181 for which we need not vote on. In other words, by law, they fall automatically as charges against the consolidated fund. And some of these services for which we need not vote because they fall automatically, and so we have the heading expenses provided by law, are some special people and some special positions. The Governor General's salary, for example, the Director of Audit's salary, appropriate expenses for the Supreme Court, the Office of the Attorney General, but there specifically the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Court Service Commissions under the Office of the Prime Minister, retiring benefits of people, the national savings schemes which we have, interest and exchange, loan repayment and expenses. These are outlined here as matters for which expenses provided by law, and therefore, in a sense, the expenditure follow naturally with respect to these without more. Mr. Speaker, going now more specifically to the details of the bill and the services that we are intended to provide, I want to make the following statements with respect to the government's policies and programs currently in existence and, of course, for 2022. Mr. Speaker, we have been grappling with the most devastating health and economic crises in our lifetime for the last 21 months. These crises have toppled economies and health systems around the world. Nevertheless, we here in St. Kitts and Nevis have managed to survive, and we have done a remarkable job as a small island developing state to withstand the pressures of this COVID-19 pandemic. My team unity government has always put the people of this federation first in all that we do. This has been clearly demonstrated even during this period of difficult challenge. My team unity government swiftly responded to the pandemic by implementing the necessary measures to save lives, preserve livelihoods, and protect our fragile economy and I dare say country. By the end of 2020, St. Kitts and Nevis had the best scorecard on the management of COVID-19 in the Western Hemisphere. This is no small achievement. By any standard, our COVID-19 response teams have done a tremendous service on behalf of our country, and they deserve our full commendation for their great service. With the support of many citizens and residents who volunteered to take the vaccine, our country has met and surpassed the WHO's target of 40% of the general population being vaccinated by the end of 2021. As at the 12th December 2021, 80.8% of the adult population in St. Kitts and Nevis had received their first shot, and 74.5% were fully vaccinated. Our efforts here in the Federation have not gone unnoticed. St. Kitts and Nevis has been recognized for its good performance in terms of the implementation of our vaccination program, which started in February of this year. I want to say a hearty thank you to those citizens and residents who have volunteered to be vaccinated, helping us to save lives, protect livelihoods, and ensure that our country has the best chance of recovering from the impact of the pandemic. Additionally, we have administered a first dose of the vaccine to 15% of our children, 12 years to 17, and 12.7% of them have been fully vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, in the continuum of time, we look at the past, we consider the present, and of course we consider the future. That was in part what the prayer warrior said to us this morning. It is with our future prospects and aspirations in mind, however, that we have decided to adopt the theme for this budget, investing in our people, putting St. Kitts and Nevis back on track. This theme represents the unwavering commitment of this team unity government to continue to invest in the lives of all citizens and residents, their future and their children's future. It also signals my government's desire to get our country back on track to achieving our developmental priorities. My administration has made substantial investments in our people by securing the necessary vaccines and putting in place a response regime that has not only kept our people safe, but has also averted the collapse of our health system and our economy. To God we give the glory. Clearly now, our citizens and residents can look forward to the promised stronger and safer future. The IMF projections indicated that St. Kitts and Nevis will realize a 10% economic growth in 2022. This budget, in my view, is yet another tool to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis can realize this very optimistic growth forecast. Mr. Speaker, this budget makes provision for the continuation of the excellent work of the government. Only a few months ago, this Team Unity administration provided a second stimulus package, bringing relief and support to our people. This stimulus package, like the first we delivered in the earlier stages of the pandemic in 2020, was targeted and comprehensive. This stimulus package was another major investment in the quality of life of our people. Mr. Speaker, the two stimulus packages are underpinned by the compassion and care that my government has for our people. My Team Unity government, recognizing the impact the coronavirus would have on the socio-economic environment within the Federation, took immediate action to assist the most vulnerable within our society, as well as those persons that saw their livelihoods eroded or seriously impaired. As you would recall from the 2021 budget, the resources for the Poverty Alleviation Program were scaled up to address the needs of those individuals whose household income had fallen below the threshold of $3,000 per month as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. I can report that an additional 1,056 persons applied and were approved for addition to the PAP since the start of the pandemic, and 65% of these successful applicants were women. Our actions not only reflect our commitment to investing in our people, but reaffirm our commitment to supporting the most vulnerable and our commitment to ensuring that everyone enjoys the stronger, safer future, regardless of age, gender, and socioeconomic standing. As at November 2021, the government has expended $86.2 million on the PAP program since its inception way back in December 2018. A sum of $6.1 million has been spent in direct support of households that were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, over 3,050 applications were approved under the new round of the Income Support Program, and approximately $8 million was paid to the beneficiaries. In terms of the Disability Support Program, 157 families have benefited from a payout of $390,500. Another people-centered element of our stimulus package was the fuel subsidy program that was designed to provide support to the owners of passenger buses who have been negatively impacted as a result of the pandemic and who were not receiving any other form of income. Under this initiative, a total of 109 bus owners have benefited from a payout of $129,800. These three programs have provided an essential lifeline for many individuals who were finding it difficult to provide for themselves and their families. The strategy that the government deployed over the last several months resulted in a significant investment in our people at a time when they most needed help, to withstand the challenges and dislocations brought on by the pandemic. It is clear that our investments have helped to set the stage for our country to get back on track, thereby creating the stronger and safer future for all our people. By the second half of 2021, we saw the signs of a rebound in the domestic economy. We are hopeful that the positive signs observed in the major growth sectors of the economy would be sustained beyond 2021 and over the medium term. This would be critical for our country to realize the double-digit growth predicted by the IMF and our own statistics department for the year 2022. We intend to continue our enhanced surveillance of activities on the ground to ensure that the public sector remains responsive to the needs of our people. Mr. Speaker, while we have focused our attention primarily on overcoming the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, we must also increase our focus on some of the long-term issues confronting us as a small island developing state. We must address the issue of slowing productivity growth, climate change, and the ever-changing global financial architecture. It is therefore our intention to use this 2022 budget to strategically direct investment in our people, into infrastructure development and institutional strengthening, thereby putting our country back on track to achieve our development goals. We encourage and solicit the full participation of the private sector in order to deliver an even stronger economic growth scorecard for our people. I want to take a brief look at some of the recent international and regional macroeconomic developments of concern to us. Mr. Speaker, the global economic output is expected to increase by 4.9% in 2022. The global downside risks include supply chain disruptions, the ongoing social unrest in parts of the world, the geopolitical tensions that have emerged, the cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, and the impact of severe natural disasters. Mr. Speaker, the economies in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union recorded a decline in real GDP of 14% in 2020. This decline in economic activity was attributed to significant contractions in key sectors. Tourism fell by 63.2%, transport, storage and communications by 25.7%, construction by 17.1%, wholesale and retail by 12.4%. In other words, across the currency union, member states suffered decline in economic activity ranging from 2.7% to 23.8%. The 2022 growth prospects within the currency union is now being put at 6.9% and would be contingent on a number of critical variables, including the rate of uptake of available vaccines, the occurrence of natural disasters, and the emergence of new variants and waves of the virus across the currency union and in tourism and investment source markets. Turning now to the domestic economy, Mr. Speaker, as the pandemic continues to test the fortitude and resilience of our citizens and residents and our economy at large, I am honored to report that the Team Unity administration maintained its record of being a good steward of the government's finances. The fortitude and resilience were demonstrated in the outturn of the government's fiscal operations for the year 2020, when we achieved a recurrent account surplus of 40.8 million. Needless to say, Mr. Speaker, the main priority of my government was and still is the protection of lives and livelihoods of the citizens and residents of this federation. This has been the focus over the past 21 months. The Team Unity government is very much aware of the hardship faced by individuals and businesses alike as a direct result of the pandemic. Consequently, being the caring and compassionate government that we are, as I mentioned earlier, we rolled out substantial stimulus packages to ease the burden on the people. At the same time, the government continued to execute its capital program that would boost economic activity in the country. The funds expended for capital projects in 2020 contribute to an overall deficit of $63.4 million. My government deemed it important to continue the programs that would result in job creation and spur economic activity in our key sectors. Ordinarily, our fiscal policy does not support the running of deficits on any of the major accounts. However, it is our firm view that our decision to incur the above-mentioned deficit position was a sensible one. Indeed, this was a direct result of our commitment to investing in our people, even in the face of the worst health and economic crises, which resulted in diminished revenues and required a much larger outlay of expenditure in certain areas, especially in health and national security. However, we took a calculated decision to ease the pressure on consumers and businesses by waiving, deferring, and reducing several taxes. As expected, the pandemic adversely impacted the profitability of several businesses, especially in the tourism sector. This, coupled with the revenue foregone from some of the stimulus relief measures and an overall reduction in the level of imports, caused the government's total revenue and grants of $707.5 million for 2020 to be 17.4% below target. Total expenditure, on the other hand, amounted to $770.9 million by the end of the fiscal year 2020. This expenditure outturn was 4.7% lower than the budget, which is testament to our ability to prudently manage the public finances and satisfactorily provide essential services such as healthcare, education, and national security. Approximately $39.5 million expended in 2020 on COVID-related matters as my government responded to protect the people. Some $14 million was spent on the health sector and for national security to secure, for example, the medical brigade that came in from Cuba and other specialist support, equipment, vaccines, and of course, quarantine sites. $9.6 million was injected into the agricultural sector to boost the food supply in the Federation. $15.7 million was used to capitalize the severance payment fund as claims for severance payments reached unprecedented levels in 2020. Financial support of $7 million was provided in 2020 to the St. Christopher Year and Seaports Authority as a consequence of the severe impact of the pandemic on its finances. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, despite the unforeseen expenditure occasioned by the pandemic, there was little impact on the public sector debt. The debt to GDP ratio, however, increased from 54.3% at the end of 2019 to 67.9% at the end of 2020. The 13.6 percentage point decline in economic activity in 2020 was the primary reason for the increase in the debt ratio. So total debt basically maintaining at the same level, the economy shrunk, and as a consequence, the ratio moved. However, as a result of our stimulus packages, we are already seeing a rebound in economic activity, and this will bring a further positive realignment of our debt to GDP ratio. Mr. Speaker, my administration fully agrees with the United Nations Secretary General when he stated the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis must lead to a different economy. Therefore, in June of this year, we commenced the consultative process with the private and public sectors and civil society at large to facilitate the development of the post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy. This document will focus on key growth sectors with the aim of building resilience through the enhancement of established economic drivers such as tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing. Attention would also be focused on exploring avenues to diversify into the green, the blue, and knowledge economies, creatives, and innovation. Additionally, my administration will continue to play its part to advance our micro, small, and medium enterprises, human resource development, building of the digital society, resilient infrastructure, and of course a robust health system. This strategy will be the foundation of a long-term national development plan which will guide the Federation's advancement into becoming a sustainable island state. Mr. Speaker, looking at the construction sector has recorded changes during the various periods over the history of our development. However, the speed and severity of the disruptions in investment in the sector was a consequence of the pandemic, and that has been unprecedented. The lockdowns of our economies, the closure of borders, the outbreak and surges of the virus across the globe indeed impacted the sector. We remain hopeful that there will be improvement in the performance of the construction here by the end of 2021. We expect that the investments made by the government in projects such as the upgrade of the Island Main Road, the rehabilitation of the Old Road Bay, and the road improvement project, combined with an upturn in residential construction, would positively impact the sector. Mr. Speaker, the Central Bank, in its forecast, has indicated that the lending for residential activities have increased by 7% for this year, and commercial property by 16%, which resulted in a total investment of about $334.2 million during the period. We note this year that the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis approved 50 loans with a total value of $7.4 million for home construction, renovations, and land purchases. Mr. Speaker, the National Housing Corporation is still the main entity to which the government has been and continues to deliver its housing solutions. And for 2021, the NHC did well to bring a number of houses to completion, some in collaboration with the National Bank. They have special arrangements there. We also recognize that through the Pride program, 25 homes were delivered. And of course, Mr. Speaker, especially important to the people in East Barstow were the 24 units delivered at the Wellington site there. Mr. Speaker, in September of this year, we were successful in providing the opportunity to 24 deserving individuals to own their homes on Wellington Road. This is the first phase of the rejuvenation of that urban area that was made possible with the support of the government of Venezuela. This was a crowning achievement for NHC in its 25th year of nation building, and we are pleased to report that the NHC has already started phase 2 of that housing development on Wellington Road. Mr. Speaker, the prospects for foreign direct investment remains a critical element in our recovery process. And Skipper is reporting good news is that in the medium term, the outlook for the construction sector is positive, and we expect to have a growth rate of about 11.7% in 2022. We are working to ensure that the construction sector is put back on track, and we invite the private sector to come on board to ensure that this is achieved not only in 2022, but is sustained over the medium term. And as we get further into debate, we will identify a number of private sector projects, for example, Tennessee's project at Duas. We will identify the Liamiga housing, which was launched just last week, and several other housing projects put on by credit union, for example. All of them will add to a positive outturn in 2022. Turning quickly to agriculture, Mr. Speaker, the American statesman and lawyer Daniel Webster said, "Let us not forget that the cultivation of the earth is the most important labor of man. When tillage begins, other arts will follow. The farmers, therefore, are the founders of civilization." End of quote. I want, on that note, really to hail and to welcome a number of representatives of the farming and fishing community here to this budget gathering, and to thank them, of course, for coming and being part of the experience. At no time, Mr. Speaker, has this statement proven more accurate during this period of the socioeconomic fallout caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our goal, Mr. Speaker, is to produce more of what we consume, continues again to align with our commitment to making strides in achieving sustainable development goals, number 2, zero hunger, and number 12, responsible consumption and production. The injection of approximately 10 million to boost the production of the agricultural sector and ensure greater food security has helped in this regard. Month after month, we have had strong positive returns in crops, in livestock, and in the fisheries sector. And we are happy, Mr. Speaker, that the stimulus package has aided and assisted our fisher folks and, of course, our farmers in making progress and, of course, earning better livelihoods. In the fisheries sector, for example, the fish landings from January to October total 890 pounds, with a landed value of $6.9 million. The investment made to date in the fisheries sector is showing positive return. And in fact, the fisheries sector is one component of the agricultural sector that continues to show double-digit growth for the year so far. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the efforts of the Ministry of Agriculture to involve young people, and I note in particular the partnership between the ministry and the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College. Under that particular partnership, young people are being introduced to internship program with the Ministry of Agriculture so that they can be exposed to areas of agro-processing and, of course, laboratory techniques. These efforts are yielding results, such as improved food security here in the Federation. My government will continue to make the necessary investment in our people in the agricultural sector, and we will vigorously pursue our related developmental goals to this avenue. Turning to tourism, Mr. Speaker, this sector has borne the full brunt of the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. Experts in the travel industry are, however, hopeful for a return to pre-pandemic global travel levels by the year 2023. Notwithstanding, my government has initiated a strategy for putting tourism sector back on track. Our strategy is designed to allow the sector to continue to act as a catalyst for substantial socioeconomic growth and development through the creation of employment, spurring entrepreneurship and infrastructure development. At this juncture, my government remains optimistic as we endeavor to maintain a careful balance between protecting lives and livelihoods to ensure a sustained recovery in the sector. Mr. Speaker, our ports of entry are the gateways to our federation. My government has made significant investments to ensure the safety and security of our ports of entry and preserve traveler health and safety without compromising user comfort and experience. The health and safety protocols would go a long way in helping the recovery process, particularly as it relates to revitalizing the over-tourist arrivals. As a result of our long-standing arrangements with airlines, such as American Airlines, Delta, Seabourn, and Liat, we have been able to restart regular airlift to the RLB International Airport. I am pleased to report that Air Canada will reintroduce its non-stop service from Toronto to Basseterre on the 19th of December 2021. Additionally, restrictions were lifted on the 1st of September 2021 for travelers from the United Kingdom, and as a consequence, British Airways has resumed its twice-weekly service from Gatwick starting the 3rd October 2021. Likewise, American Airlines resumed flights from the 2nd of November, inclusive of daily and weekly rotations from Miami, Charlotte, North Carolina, and New York. We are hopeful that the trends will be strengthened to surpass our pre-COVID passenger arrival numbers over the medium term. Mr. Speaker, of course, we have seen not only the air arrivals going up relative to last year, but of course I think the entire national community has been pleased at what has been happening with respect to the cruise tourism arm of the sector. Over the last couple of weeks, I've joined the Minister of Tourism in welcoming at least 5 new cruise ships to our country, indicating that the attractiveness of our destination as a premier cruise location is gaining weight in the marketplace. And so we will continue, Mr. Speaker, to give strong support to the tourism sector, and barring any adverse developments in relation to the Delta and the Omicron virus, we expect basically that the future for tourism will continue to be a bright one. We take pride, Mr. Speaker, in other capital projects that are taking place. We are pleased to see, for example, significant renovation work taking place at the Marriott Resort. We hope that that would have come earlier, but it is happening. We are pleased to see, again, renovation work at the Kitchen Hill Belmont Resort. And of course, Mr. Speaker, further good news has come with the recent opening of the Ramada Inn. I want to extend commendations to our Minister of Tourism and his team for their hard work and the delivery of a better year for tourism in 2021 relative to 2020. More persons are working, more persons are earning in tourism, and more persons are now able to take care of their families. It was a pleasure visiting there. I think it was last Thursday, Saturday. We visited there, had interactions with the taxi drivers and business people, and they were generally optimistic that the actions of the government, for example, in taking down the barriers, would allow them to earn more and to put the earnings higher and better for those who are reliant on that particular area of economic activity. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to give support to micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. Indeed, we have a very strong program of support, providing technical support to the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. And with the creation of our new Ministry of Entrepreneurship, other support is being brought to this particular sector. And I will leave the details of these interventions for Ministers Phipps and Byron Nisbet to elucidate in their own presentation on the budget in relation to the medium and micro businesses sector. I want to turn briefly to the area of ICT, Mr. Speaker. My government remains fully committed to the development of a digital economy here in our federation. And to date, we have made some important steps to improve connectivity within the public service, to provide digital education for public servants, and develop a cybersecurity framework. The experiences emanating from operating in the COVID-19 environment have, however, accentuated some gaps which limit the opportunity for our country to benefit fully from digital transformation. In the coming years, we will work to build out the infrastructure necessary to support a digital government. We would also pursue a comprehensive digital system that would significantly reduce the heavy reliance on paper-based processes and documentation in our civil service. It would also be necessary for attention to be given to building technical skills and knowledge in the use of digital technology to improve efficiency in the public sector and the wider community. In this regard, when we Cabinet recently looked at our priorities for training, we ensured that the area of ICT was listed as a national priority for training, and therefore it is courses of study on the national priority list going forward, which will gain priority in terms of government sponsorship and other support. Over the past year, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of National Security have led the way in the rollout of digital government services. The efforts by these two government entities have served to improve efficiency in the management of some of the essential COVID-19 related services. The Ministry of Health, for example, took proactive steps to develop needed databases to strengthen the decision-making process in our fight against COVID-19. By the end of the first quarter this year, St. Kitts Nevis COVID-19 Vaccine Information System was launched. The newly digitally based system has proven invaluable in the rollout and management of our successful COVID-19 program. This allows for electronic tracking and verification of the vaccination status of our citizens and residents. And we saw how well that worked in the recently held CPL games that took place here. We have everything now digitalized, and so information is available at the fingertips. Of course, Mr. Speaker, this had made possible electronic tracking and verification of the vaccination status of our people. Work is also very advanced and nearing completion on a contact tracing application to facilitate the case management of individuals affected by COVID-19. This becomes important because we have moved over time from attempting to isolate people, for example, at OTI, to allowing persons with COVID-19 to isolate in their own home. The tracking system will become critically important, and that has come from a recognition that our people have to learn to live with the COVID-19. We have to take the wise decision. We have to begin to live with it, and therefore our attitude towards the virus has to change. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of National Security developed and launched the KNAT, or the KNA travel form, which can be accessed online now. This has helped to facilitate the smooth implementation of the new entry procedures for all persons traveling to the Federation by air. And this system, of course, has worked. It has come using our own homegrown talent. And I want to commend P.S. Petty in particular and Ms. Blanchard, who coordinated and provided leadership in the build-out of this particular online portal. The Ministry of National Security has also moved to expand e-government services by administering the driver's license written exams, inclusive of the issuance of candidates' test results online. And Mr. Brandy was very pleased to have been able to facilitate persons who wanted to get their driving license at the time of the pandemic, when distance was the order of the day, and that led them to apply the technology. And now they have the capacity and the ability to administer these exams online. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, looking to 2022, and this is part of the heavy investment we are making in national security. I should make the point that national security does not just cover the defense force, the police, the prisons, and the fire, because these very readily come to mind when we think of national security. But the operations of the National Emergency Operation also falls under national security. Issues with respect to immigration and passport, etc., are all covered under the budget for national security. And in this regard, I want to report that in 2022, we will launch an e-passport with a new concept design. In addition, we will move from the 32-page passport to a 48-page passport. In other words, we are giving you 16 more pages, and that would be helpful for those of you who are in the frequent flyer timeline. Mr. Speaker, this new passport will incorporate advanced security features using illustrations of relevant and iconic visuals of both St. Kitts and Nevis on its pages, thereby greatly reducing the likelihood of fraudulent activity taking place with our passport. The new e-passport will contain a microchip, and it will adhere to the highest international standards. The application processing system with biometric features will validate applicants and help combat identity theft, identity fraud. The e-passport will continue to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis is at the forefront of technology in this area, and it will enhance the travel experience for our citizens and residents, and will be a source of national pride now and in the future. Mr. Speaker, while addressing the challenges of today, we remain focused on creating the necessary environment to boost the economy during the period of recovery that lies ahead. We therefore propose that the 2022 budget gives priority to the implementation of initiatives that are targeted at developing 3 pillars identified to enable digital transformation in the public sector. And the 3 pillars are people, Hence again the theme, investing in our people, the processes and the technology. We will continue to invest in the development of our public servants to enhance efficiency and effectiveness in the delivery of services to all who require them. We will also ensure that the synergies between our goal to achieve digital transformation and the development and expansion of entrepreneurs, particularly our creatives and innovators, through the continued partnerships across agencies and sectors, such as the Small Business Development Center, the Department of Culture, the Ministry of Education, and of course other thriving business operators. And I'm sure when the relevant ministers come, because we see these areas are cross-cutting, we will have a better idea of some of the practical things that are happening and will happen in 2022. We will continue, Mr. Speaker, the important partnership with the cable. The cable has to strategically position itself to fully support the digital transformation in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want again to commend its very competent and visionary CEO in Patricia Walters, who is here. Mr. Speaker, my government welcomes the progressive involvement of the private sector in the development of a digital economy here in our federation. The cable continues to demonstrate its corporate, or should we say good, social corporate responsibility by providing small, medium business packages of 100 megabytes, providing 3 times the speed for minimal fee increase. Additionally, 9 free Wi-Fi hotspots were installed in downtown Bastille. My understanding is that they provide connectivity to approximately 20,000 residents and visitors each month. So you don't have internet at home, and we wish everyone will have. There are 9 free Wi-Fi hotspots downtown. You don't have data, go to the square and go to 8 other hotspots properly and conveniently located in the Bastille area. This, of course, is getting the internet service absolutely free as a result of this intervention. Mr. Speaker, the cable continues to provide free internet access to 17 community centers. Indeed, I think all our community centers now have free internet access thanks to the cable. Could we give the cable some commendation for that as well? It is uniquely poised to maintain productivity and advance connectivity through the entire island using its fiber optic cables. And I've asked the CEO to provide a paper to Cabinet, because my understanding, what we have in terms of our fiber optic cables and network is an important resource that could bring benefits beyond St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I have put the Walters to speak with the regional people who have come forward to me to share this particular view. It is a matter that the former Minister of ICT, Mr. Byron, and I have spoken about on several occasions. The cable will also begin to connect homes in communities to its new underground fiber broadband network in the new year. This is an important element in facilitating the very important objective of the government to develop a digital society where affordable and accessible high-speed internet is available to all. Turning, Mr. Speaker, to our CBI program, the ability of our federation to weather the economic storm caused by the pandemic was significantly influenced by the continued success of our CBI program. Undoubtedly, our CBI program has maintained its ranking as one of the best in the industry In fact, Mr. Speaker, the latest grading by the Financial Times Professional Wealth Management magazine has rated St. Kitts and Nevis as being #1. I repeat, St. Kitts and Nevis CBI program has been rated as being #1, with perfect rankings in ease of processing, in due diligence, in citizenship timeline, in family and mandatory travel or residence. Moreover, the program once again received the highest score in the citizenship timeline pillar as a result of our accelerated application process. I think to date we may be the only program able to provide the accelerated application process. We have transformed our CBI. We have come a long way from the difficult period in 2014 when we were to lose our Canadian visa over the management of our CBI program. We have come a long way over the FinCEN advisory in May of 2014 when the United States government indicated it has lost confidence in the leadership of the CBI program and the leadership of the country. Today we are being ranked as #1. Across critically important indicators, we are moving forward in a very good way. The robust procedures that are embedded in the program have enabled us to maintain our platinum brand and have ensured that we retain a significant share in the major markets around the world. This is not something that we take for granted. We are very much aware of competing forces, and as such we have had to be innovative to be able to maintain our status without compromising the integrity of the program. It was in this context that in 2021 we created a new investment type under the CBI program, which we call the Alternative Investment Option. This option provides investors with another means by which to gain economic citizenship while contributing to the overall development of St. Kitts and Nevis. It would involve projects that would spur economic activity in the Federation beyond the traditional areas of tourism. So we see what the CBI did to the build-out of Four Seasons residences. We see what the CBI did to help us to finance the Park Hyatt operating in St. Kitts. We see what it has done in other areas. And now we have moved to provide alternative platforms of engagement because the country is more than just a tourism product. And so we need people to partner with the government in some projects. For example, the housing program becomes an important one. There's a high demand, unmet demand for housing solutions in the country. And the government will focus on the low income, providing those persons on minimum and low income with the opportunity for home ownership, and allow the private sector to become more involved in the delivery of housing solutions to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. An opportunity for our young contractors to step up to the plate. An opportunity for business people to become involved as TDC has done in relation to the Duos project. An opportunity for our own sons and daughters to come forward in an area of high demand and become competitive in the delivery of services. Turning, Mr. Speaker, to the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry has attracted significance around the world, and St. Kitts and Nevis is working hard to seize all opportunities within the industry. Our Federation will seek to collaborate with neighboring islands in the sub-region and wider Caribbean, as well as to establish relationships with global cannabis professionals and entities to build a thriving cannabis industry here. In February 2020, we passed the Cannabis Bill, and that provided, again, the framework for us to advance by the 30th of April 2021 with the establishment of the Medicinal Cannabis Authority. This industry, Mr. Speaker, can create new opportunities for locals to generate new jobs, and it will also become a new source of revenue for our government, as it has in St. Vincent, for example, and as it has in Jamaica, for example, Mr. Speaker. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis will guarantee that the industry benefits all our citizens. My government will work to ensure that the authority is provided with the necessary resources to achieve its goals and objectives. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend Mr. Ernest Amery, a well-known successful businessman, for coming forward and accepting the chairmanship of the authority with a view to help us in the more quickly build out of this particular sector. I also want to say that in the 2022 provision, we have provided for a consultant coming in from Trinidad and Tobago to work with the CEO at that particular authority to get the processes more quickly in place. So work, Mr. Speaker, is ongoing. Sometimes from the outside it appears to be too slow, and we need, of course, to enhance the delivery of these services. But this is a new area, and it is an area fraught with challenges, and therefore we have to be careful in the manner in which we proceed with respect to the build-out of this industry. We have the legal framework, and we now have the personnel in place being provided for in the estimates. Mr. Speaker, in terms of our skills and human development and expansion, this, of course, has been already captured the attention of the public by the significant investment we are going to be making in 2022 in education, over $100 million. I want again to thank the Cable for its partnership with the Ministry of Education over these difficult 21 months by providing free internet upgrades and, of course, ensuring that all 15 of our early childhood centers, all our primary and secondary schools, and all our teachers have access to ICT facilities. I want again to commend you, Ms. Walters, for your yeoman service in this regard. And I'm sure when Minister Powell comes, he will speak more to that collaboration, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to implement initiatives that would enhance our goal to integrate technology in the education system. And we are part of an OECS initiative involving the Inter-American Development Bank and the CDB, which will provide support in some critical areas, including investing in the expansion of digital assets and infrastructure needed to support hybrid approaches to learning, upgrading the pedagogical competence of teachers to effectively engage and support learners in the virtual educational space. These and more, Mr. Speaker, will be supported by the $104 million we are provided for in this budget. And I know that the permanent secretary is as pleased as the minister and the education community must be. Mr. Speaker, what about our investment in health? This has been significant and continues to be. As at November 22nd, we have expended, or the end of November, we have expended some $22 million in additional to the budget proposed last year for 2021 to deal with health sector responses to the pandemic. And I am advised by the PS of Health that a new submission will still come to the Cabinet seeking permission or seeking resources for further unexpected expenditure on health as a consequence of our efforts to contain the pandemic. The fight, of course, against COVID-19 took a transformational shift with our national vaccination program, which is well known. And the final critical element in that rollout has been the arrival of the Pfizer vaccine, which has allowed us to begin to administer that to protect our children 12 to 17 years. This, of course, is well known. We want to encourage parents to encourage their children to move forward and to protect themselves. The information, if we listen to the news, as we move into the winter, we can expect to see upsurges or surges in the transmission of the virus. And since we are now open, we are having larger arrivals into our country, there is an element of risk. Mr. Speaker, we intend to improve the services offered at all our health institutions and at the JNF in particular. And they, of course, will benefit from the $73.7 million that we have invested. I should say that this represents a 12% increase for the health sector. What will this money do? This money, Mr. Speaker, will help to provide necessary resources to fund additional medical professionals, and we need them. A general surgeon, a urologist, oncologist, orthopedic surgeon, pathologist, ear, nose, and throat specialists will all be recruited for our health institution. We will provide new diagnostic services with the introduction of a new MRI machine to be installed at the JNF General Hospital for the first time. The necessary technical personnel for the efficient and effective operation of the MRI machine are all proposed for funding in 2022. I was asked on my own program, Mr. Speaker, whether I didn't believe it was time for us to have an MRI at the JNF Hospital. It was easy to answer, yes, it is full time. That is part of our commitment to deliver the stronger and safer future, as part of our commitment to health care for all, that our premier institution, that is the JNF Hospital, should have the basic equipment, the MRI machine, and all the associated support. So this then will be a significant transformation in the delivery of health care. Long in coming, but it is now will be there in 2022. Before us, it never was. Team Unity is now making it happen. And our support for our health centers will continue, including the renovation work of our health center in Bastille, McKnight, and of course, St. Peter's. The member for number 8 had asked me to mention this particular one. The future of our health systems look promising, and we can take comfort that our investments which have been proposed for 2022 in the health and the safety of our people would lead to a better future. Mr. Speaker, that brings me to the area of public safety and security, some of which I've already spoke to in relation to the response of our police, in relation to the response of our immigration department, etc., in the fight for COVID-19. But certainly, national security continues to be a top priority of the Team Unity administration. And we have put forward $80.1 million to assist that particular ministry. We hope that our Commissioner of Police will use the money well. We hope that our Fire Chief will use the money well. We hope that our Commissioner of Prisons will use that money well. And we hope that our Lieutenant Colonel Comrie will use the money well. We hope that NEMA will continue to be at the fulcrum of our national response to disaster awareness, disaster preparation. In their leadership of COVID, NEMA stood out of one of those entities and institutions that was of instrumental service to our country in its darkest hour. I want in his absence to commend Mr. Abdias Samuel. He has been a model civil servant, going beyond the call of duty 7 days per week without let, to ensure that we have been able to achieve the success that we have so far, not only in the management of COVID, but in our preparation for all disasters. How quickly, for example, we were able to mobilize the national community to come to support St. Vincent in their moment of need occasioned by the volcanic disruption. So there's a lot of positive things that are happening. Of course, I have to commend the co-chairs of our National Disaster Mitigation Council, our Attorney General, and Minister Wendy Phipps for their work at the national level on this particular council. They have saved me some sleepless nights as they took on that burden. And so yesterday in Cabinet, I believe I did commend them, as I have commended them before, for their work in this regard. We will continue our efforts, Mr. Speaker, to keep the country safe. And none can deny that St. Kitts and Nevis in 2021 is far more at peace, far safer than St. Kitts and Nevis was up to 2014 and up to February of 2015. Team Unity has ushered in meaningful changes by giving support to the national security arm of the state, because fundamentally there is no state without security. And the most fundamental responsibility of a modern state must be to keep its citizens safe. And that is where we start, from the point of philosophical standing. So gone are the era when if there was quiet and there was shooting in the land, it will flow off somebody's back like water. We have accepted that the primary responsibility of the state, whether it is to national security or health, however broad the coverage you give it, it must be to protect the people from harm. And so in 2022, some of the new programs we brought on board, for example, the Explorers, a new thing brought on board as part of a vision of helping our young people from an early stage in their life to have a great appreciation for issues of law and order. We have built out the largest national youth group in the Federation, in the Explorers Club. Now 1,400 young people strong. No other group, no other youth group has been able to do that. Not that there is competition, but there is cause for commendation. And why did we do that? We had to intervene, Mr. Speaker, because the reports that were coming in was that the culture of violence and criminality that was creeping into our schools. The mature criminals were, as it were, having others under their tutelage. Our vulnerable children were being exposed. Drugs in our primary school, guns, etc. And we had to find a way to, as it were, protect the most vulnerable from that culture. Even as we intervene at another level to change lives through the alternative life pathway program, to take people from the path of crime. So we had a two-pronged approach. At the one extreme, the youngest of our children must say no to drugs, no to crime, no to guns. And our intervention with the Explorers program has become a model that is now being considered by universities in the United States of America in determining what models work in response to crime. We have done well. We have done well as a people. We have done well in the fight against crime in St. Kitts and Nevis, but we are not yet there. And indeed, in my view, it's not a destination. It's not to say you reach here and you stop, because we have learned that there will always be the evolution of threats to national security. And so it is always a work in progress, never a destination, always a journey. And yes, Mr. Speaker, some of the modes of the intervention are new, and some people may not like them, but they also do not like the crime. And so, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do what our country needs is peace. Without peace, there is no prosperity. Without peace in the land, business cannot operate properly as businesses. And whatever has to be done to shut down gang and criminal activity in the country, we must be prepared to do. And we must ensure always that our law enforcement agencies have adequate resources to be able to deter the growth, to contain it and reduce it at every moment in time. When it comes to national security, preserving the peace, we make no apologies for investing. When it comes to taking our citizens from a life of gang and criminal activity and put them in a brand new path so that they can become responsible fathers and mothers for their children and save the generation after them, we will continue to invest, because it is a right thing to do. And sometimes when we see all these things, we say, well, what about investing it there? Well, what happened when you invested there and leave this one? And sometimes I try to reflect on some passage of scripture to guide me. Sometimes I begin to think, I wonder whether there was something like this in the prodigal son story. That bad son, if you look at it from a certain perspective, took up all the father's wealth, and God, my grandma would say, he whacked it off. Old son of a gun in those days, my grandmother would have called him. But look at it. A father, as our society must be, a society of care and compassion, cannot allow even one young man, one young woman to go astray if we can avoid it. Message of the prodigal son, the fatted calf. Because here was he coming over yonder, and the father was there to see him from a yonder, caring. The outstretched hand of caring of St. Kitts and Nevis must always be there for our children who have gone astray. Let them come back. Give them, if you need, the fatted calf. And there are those of you who said, Lord, you give them such a big party. There's no need for this big party. I agree with you. It could be a nice party. It don't have to be a big one. But the important message that the complaining son had forgotten. And the father said it. All the rest that I have here are for you. Why make noise about I saving your brother, if you will? Why make noise about the government intervention to bring peace, to save our people, to allow you the quiet to go about with dignity in the streets and the alleyways of Newtown and McKnight once again, and the rest of the land? All of St. Kitts and Nevis is your theater to perform and explore. Sometimes we get caught up in what somebody else is getting. Sometimes it always looks too much, and we miss the opportunity for a golden stroke for development. That is what we are attempting to do with our alternative pathway program. We continue the other investments, because it's not just you're doing that and you're doing this and you forget. This CCTV program continues this year. We had the launch of that program in Nevis, $4.9 million of development aid invested there. In 2022, we have provided for the build-out of the Charlestown and Gingerland police station. It's part of our promise to ensure a safe environment in which our people can operate, Mr. Speaker. I want, Mr. Speaker, to allow the Attorney General to speak to the matter of justice and legal affairs, the developments, the addition, for example, of night court in St. Kitts and Nevis for the first time, the kind of services that are being provided by our Legal Aid and Advice Center, the work of the Law Commission. All these and more speaks to our commitment to the rule of law in the context of our lived democracy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to shift the attention again, Mr. Speaker, to forecast that for 2021, when all is said and done, the Financial Secretary has advised that we will have a very favorable performance in 2021. I took note that when I think Pastor Webb prayed so well this morning, he mentioned that we have many days, and not sure he had the arithmetic the same way I had counted it, but he had it an arithmetic nonetheless. There are many more days yet to come, and we do not know what the outcome may be. But so far, we are reasonably predicting that 2021 we will have a strong surplus. Mr. Speaker, over the period 2022 to 2024, it is projected that the fiscal operations of the government would, on average, result in an overall surplus of about $900,000. That is because of our very hectic capital program, which we will continue 22, 23, 24, etc. The recurrent revenue is projected at around $853.1 million per annum, and our recurrent expenditure will reach $733.5 million. Over the medium term, our capital expenditure would average about $130 million. Our document says $129.5 million. We anticipate, therefore, that the medium-term fiscal outlook will be contingent on the expected rebound of our economy. And that is why we have to monitor what is happening in agriculture, what is happening in tourism, what is happening in manufacturing. All these will give us some evidence of how the country is performing. Mr. Speaker, our people has been through a lot. We have had, as I said earlier, to engage in additional significant expenditures. But at the end of it, importantly, Mr. Speaker, we are on target to be able to realize a comeback in the economy, which will spell well for all the important indicators of national development and fiscal management, including our debt-to-GDP ratio, which, as I said earlier, that took an upward dive as a result of the contraction of the economy. With the economy now expected to rebound, we are going to be in a better place, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the tourism sector is projected to impact the full recovery of the economy. And importantly, for 2022, we are expecting that tourism will grow 109% in 2022. following the contraction in 2021, estimated at 2021. In other words, tourism should come back on track next year, doing twice as much in 2022 as would be realized in 2021. This, of course, has been helped by the easement of our COVID-19 restrictions and protocols. Again, we expect expansion in the construction sector, and I've outlined some of the things that are to happen, but the construction, for example, of the new correctional facility, the new Barstow High School, water resources and drilling of wells, especially in Keon by Bede, all of these, Mr. Speaker, coupled with private sector activities, and they bear repeating, TDC George, the credit union housing project, all of these should help to stimulate the construction activity, bring choices to our people. The agricultural sector will grow by 7.5% over the growth, which is double digit, the last stats that I had for 2021. And of course, our wholesale and retail trade, storage and communication sectors, they are all anticipated to record improved performances. So, a better future. Our tomorrow of 2022 will certainly be better than 2021 by the grace of God. Mr. Speaker, in the context of all that I have said, we have approached the 2022 budget preparation with great care to facilitate the continuation of support to our vulnerable households and viable businesses, and vulnerable households and businesses, that should read. Fortunately for us here in the Federation, we are not overly burdened by the threat of debt distress, and therefore the government still has some fiscal space to successfully implement this budget that would enable us to honor our financial obligations, protect the poor, the needy, the children among us, and at the same time stimulate the economy to put people back to work again. Because in the end, it is a people-centered budget. It's all about people, Mr. Speaker. Having taken stock of the macroeconomic impact of the pandemic on our country, we are projecting that for 2022, we will realize $913.6 million for total revenue and grants, of which the recurrent revenue will be a whopping $898.1 million. So we are positive about 2022, and positive in the context of the predictions of the IMF and our statistics department that the country will grow in double-digit terms. Total revenues and grant would be comprised of just over $430 million, and from taxes we will generate about $468 million, and $15.5 million is being expected. That sum is expected via development aid. In other words, all activities taking place in St. Kitts and Nevis will be funded from our own governmental resources. And we are not anticipating that we will have to take on debt. On the expenditure side, $910 million approximately by the end of 2022, $728.6 million for recurrent expenditure, and $180.9 million for capital expenditure and net lending. For 2022, if all things remain the same, we anticipate that we will realize an overall surplus of $4 million, a primary surplus of $21.8 million for the fiscal year 2022. we anticipate that we will eliminate the need to borrow, and we will allow the government to attain the goal of a 60% debt to GDP ratio by 2023. The magic of the 60% debt to GDP ratio is that it is an international benchmark for countries' ability to handle its debt. And once you go beyond the 60, then people begin to look at you in a certain way. And the higher you get over 60, you become more of a pariah. Now, what is important is that the ECCB had set the target date for countries to achieve this critical milestone as 2035, after it had weighed in and factored in the consequences of the pandemic. In our budget, we are predicting that by 2023, we will achieve the target. We may very well, for the second time, become the first country in the currency union to have achieved the target in advance of the date. When in 2017 or thereabout, could I get a wink of the eye? 18? 18. 16. 2016, Mr. Speaker, for accuracy, for 2016, we achieved the lowest debt ratio in the currency union. We have come 14 years, 14 long years in advance of the target. In another country, they will call that an economic miracle. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we be quiet about it. Important achievement, an important fiscal target being met, Mr. Speaker. This now leads me, Mr. Speaker, to the fiscal measures and strategic interventions. Mr. Speaker, I want first of all to take the opportunity to offer a hearty thank you to the many civil servants who work very hard in spite of the difficulties encountered over the last 21 months. And many of them were on the front line, and many of them were also on the back lines. In this regard, my government has determined that all civil servants on the islands of St. Kitts and Nevis will, before Christmas 2021, receive a double salary payment.
Honorable Minister of Finance, I'm wondering how I should react, but continue.
Mr. Speaker, the People's Parliament and the people have given a sign of approval and approbation. This is a historic development, and I want to commend them for saying how pleased they are. In fact, the entire country look forward to this. We were driving down College Street and a couple of people tried to flag me down. Mr. Prime Minister, budget today, we want a double. Make sure you deliver the double. I have today, in the name of the people, delivered the double to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, we do so, Mr. Speaker, for a number of reasons. But importantly, we are a compassionate government. We understand that even as we speak or we meet here, thousands of persons are still suffering. Thousands of persons are still not fully engaged in our hotels and our restaurants. We appreciate that, and they need some help. We appreciate that although we have been unique in protecting the jobs of 10,000 people or the income, our civil servants, our GAE workers, our pensioners, protecting their flow by not laying off persons. They have families. And many of our civil servants have now become the sole income owner in their family. and extended family. Persons who before had a sense of independence, now looking for you who working for government. You have such a good government, paying you all straight, whether you all work or not work, some will say. You have such a good government. And so your families who are not getting pay elsewhere come look to you. Say, give me something, man. And then you could afford to do it because you pay continues straight. So we have done that out of compassion. But there's another view. And the wisdom that has been proffered is that governments have to be careful to take the lead, to take their countries, take their economies out of the pandemic. Indeed, one illustrious lady who once head the IMF, she said, spend the money. You have to know, and I don't know what that is, whether that is an encouragement or a station of our emphasis here. But, Mr. Speaker, the wisdom was that we have to very quickly get our economies back on track. We have to, in their view, prevent permanent scarring of the economies. That is businesses being closed forever. That is the economy being so choked up after the COVID-19 that it takes years to grow. We are hoping that by this generosity, by putting more monies into circulation, some $35 million plus in circulation, that we will see the impact of this new wave of aggregate demand in the restaurants, in the supermarkets, leading to higher demand for labor and for putting our people at work. Mr. Speaker, what else can we do at this particular time? We can stay firm to our commitment. And in the last general elections, the people on the STEP program said that they no longer want to continue infinitum, indefinitely, to be part of a workforce in no man's land. When they go for loan, some banker, financial institution says you're not permanent. When they go to get to their visa, you're on STEP. Well, that time it was called PEP, but we have stepped it up. Mr. Speaker, you were not being recognized of having permanence. So for 2022, we will move forward in our commitment to make STEP workers permanent, Mr. Speaker, part of the government employee base. But we will do so in a phased basis. Mr. Bradshaw, who is here, our Accountant General, led the committee for the implementation. We have STEP workers in the private sector. Of course, they are not within our reach in terms of making them permanent, because the government can't go and say to TDC, you must. But we certainly could say, well, if you're not going to at least try, we will have to take back our worker from you. Our first phase would involve those in the government service, customs, the ministries, the prisons, wherever they work, because we have immediate control. Our first phase would look at those who have been doing a wonderful job, and we'll give them the benefit of moving forward. That is our commitment for 2022. In addition, the government GAE employees, our commitment to them will continue to be satisfied in 2022. We said that we will allow them to continue to receive the honorarium until they were regularized. It was a promise made by the past administration, which it never fulfilled. Team Unity is doing it. So in addition to getting their double, they will also receive the honorarium this year, thanks to the Team Unity government. Promise made, promise we have committed to. Mr. Speaker, for 2022, again, as we try to help not just individuals, but also businesses, we will extend several of the stimulus measures that we introduced and which were due to expire at the 31st of December 2021. These will be extended for 6 months. They include the removal of VAT and import duty on hygiene items such as hand sanitizers, disinfectant spray, rubbing alcohol, latex gloves, etc. This is critical in our efforts to take preventative measures against COVID-19. We will remove import duty and customs service charge on selected items, including vegetable, fruits, juices, etc. Of course, this is an effort to encourage our citizens and residents to boost their immune system by accessing critical supplies and to reduce the cost of living. We will waive the payments of consumption of water for individuals who are being laid off or experience a significant reduction to COVID-19. And our farmers will benefit from the extension of the waiver of payments for the consumption of water. For the business community, we will continue or extend the reduction of corporate tax rate from 33% to 25% for businesses that retain at least 75% of their employees. And for the small man, we will reduce the unincorporated tax rate to 2%, down from 4%. We are proposing that the 2022 estimates, Mr. Speaker, provide the necessary resources to support the PAP program, capitalize the severance payment fund to facilitate payment of any additional severance claims. In this regard, $32.3 million and $5 million would be provided for the PAP program and the severance payment fund, respectively. Similar to our approach taken in the 2021 estimate, we are proposing large investments in capital projects in 2022. A substantial portion of these resources, of course, will go to the construction sector as the government focuses attention on the implementation of programs and projects that will drive job creation and economic recovery. Once our economy is back on track, we will shift again to rebuilding the fiscal buffers, calibrating our policy measures to ensure we safely transition from the COVID-19 pandemic. Alas, our style of management has been hailed by those who have the competence to do so. The IMF told us that one of the reasons why we were able to respond so timely to the COVID-19 pandemic, providing help where it was needed to the poor and the displaced workers, was because when the COVID pandemic hit us, St. Kitts and Nevis had the strongest buffer. We were in the strongest position of all countries, large and small, in the Western Hemisphere. That is a remarkable achievement for a small island state. Mr. Speaker, can we do more? At least we will try, Mr. Speaker, to do even better than the best, if that were humanly possible. So my government, having considered a number of initiatives yesterday, thought that we could be more comprehensive in our coverage of people. And so we will extend again the income support program to assist those who are still unemployed as a result of the pandemic. And we will introduce a similar program to what we did this year, where they were receiving $1,000 per month. We will introduce that early in next year at a date to be determined. We will use a similar process to minimize fraud. We will rely upon the Social Security record to indicate to us of those who are applying, those who basically would have qualified because they would have fit the principal criterion that they had been out of work for a prolonged period of time. We will also tweak it a bit, appreciating that some people may be called back to work by a hotel or a restaurant, but it's one day and today, and on 1 day's pay and 2 days' pay, you can't live for 7 days easy. My government has compassion, and we are responding. The fuel subsidy that was granted to the bus owners, that will be extended for a further 3 months. And of course, we will also extend it now to certain certified taxi operators. Importantly, for 2022, we are going to reduce the cost of hemodialysis and oncology services at our DRNF France General Hospital. In fact, we will cut it by 50% in order to help those who are without insurance. 50%, making it easier for the vulnerable people to be able to live. Mr. Speaker, the costs of those services are very expensive. Mr. Speaker, I want to wrap up in a manner of speaking by saying that we are ever conscious of the supply chain difficulties that are being experienced around the world, what it is doing to the availability not just of food, but of building material and other products. And in this vein, we shall very early set up a high-level committee to be able to advise the government and moving forward in this regard. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I am honored by and privileged for the opportunity provided me to have served my country as a member of Parliament for the last 28 years. Since 2015, I had the awesome yet onerous task of shouldering the responsibility for the fiscal management of the country as Prime Minister and as Minister of Finance. I am humbled by what we have achieved so far. This is my 7th budget presentation as a Minister of Finance in the Team Unity Administration, and my government is presenting for the 7th time a tax-free budget. That is, no new taxes have been proposed in this budget. This means that we will be delivering the goods and service our people need without additional burdens. Indeed, we have been waiving and deferring taxes over the last 20-odd years. Mr. Speaker, we have been able to do what I've outlined in terms of measures because we manage the country well, because we have sovereign control over fiscal policy operations, because we are not in an IMF program, because we took the decisions early in our term to pay off $117 million of debt left behind by the former administration to the IMF, because we took the decision early in the term to pay $202 million to the National Bank to settle over $767 million left behind by the former administration as part of the land for debt swap. By doing all these things, and notwithstanding we have done all these things, we have resurfaced an entire island main road. We managed to keep the fiscals on track. No small achievement. The budget, Mr. Speaker, clearly demonstrates our significant investment in our people, and I need not catalog them anymore, except to give God thanks, Mr. Speaker, for his blessings and for safely taking the people of St. Kitts and Nevis through the pandemic so far. We look forward with confidence in our ability as a people to advance our country to the promised stronger and safer future. And our budget proposals basically advance this chapter in our lives. The power lies in us, Mr. Speaker, in our industry, our ingenuity and resilience, and our ability to unify around national goals and objectives, and to make our St. Kitts and Nevis the classic example of the best managed small island state. This budget is a clear manifestation of investing in our people, putting St. Kitts and Nevis back on track. It is a critical instrument in facilitating the journey of our country to that future. I want to say thank you, Mr. Speaker, for indulging me. I want to say a tremendous thank you to the leadership of the Ministry of Finance, led by our Financial Secretary, Ms. Hilary Hazel, and her Deputy, Mrs. Sylvia Combs, for the dedication that they have put in ensuring from the estimates committee meetings, the coordination of all these work. I want to thank all the other players and participants, our Accountant General, our Director of Audit for their contribution to the process of accountability in our country. And of course, I could not end without recognizing that had it not been for my Cabinet Secretary, Mrs. Josephine Huggins, who over the last week spent hours with me and a small team of other persons, including Permanent Secretary Skerritt, we would not have arrived at this moment today. And it would be remiss of me, Mr. Speaker, were I not to commend the staff, the printer, and the staff at the government printry, because up to late last night, maybe early this morning, they had the task of ensuring that this document would come properly to be available to the country and the members of the House. So on that note of gratitude, Mr. Speaker, I say thank you and may it please you. God bless you.
Thank you, the Honourable Mover of the Appropriation Bill and Minister of Finance. Honourable members, ladies and gentlemen, part of our standing orders states when the Minister of Finance has made his or her budget speech, the motion for the second reading of the bill shall be seconded and the debate thereon shall be adjourned to a time to be named by the Minister of Finance. So may I have a secondment, please?
Speaker, I rise to second the second reading of the Appropriation Bill and reserve my time to speak later in the debate.
Thank you. Honourable Minister of Finance, could you propose a time when we meet again? Everyone is happy, so you can call us back at 2 o'clock.
Speaker, very quickly with your leave, I propose that the House will meet again at 10 a.m. tomorrow in the forenoon.
That this Honourable House stands adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is WIN FM.